while we are waiting, I just want you all to know that that is quite the picture. I got to get rid of that picture. I don't know. They made me do this thing with my fingers, and it drove me crazy. I'm like, you guys, I don't do that normally, so let's not do that. But of course, I was overruled as usual.
Oh, come on. You could have told them just saying that, like, I don't know,
Right.
it's very
Yes.
professional.
Yeah.
Look thoughtful.
Well, I do pray a lot, so maybe that's okay,
There you
right?
go.
There you go.
Uh,
I have to tell you, it is so impressive what you have done. You know, Judy and Kim, it's incredible what you've done to pull this together for tonight. I was so impressed with the number of questions that we got in advance. And I was happy to read them yesterday, realizing that I was already going to cover most of what was being asked. So that was comforting. So hopefully we'll be able to help people who are on or, watch it later on. That's the most important thing.
I really appreciate that. And thank you. We appreciate your kind words. And this is our third program this week. So it's been a busy week. 3 nights in a row for Judy and me.
Wow.
We were in person the last 2 nights, so this is kind of nice to be able to be at
Yeah.
home.
It sure is. It sure is. Yeah. Yeah. So this is the hat trick, huh?
It is. We have 2 next
Very
week,
good.
and then we take a little break
Wow.
until January, but I'll tell you about those in a moment. So I'll go ahead and get us started. I'm so
Okay.
glad that you're all here, and I'm so glad that Patti Brennan is here. This is really a treat. We've been wanting to do this for such a long time. I'll tell you that years ago we did have, I think I told you this, Patti, that we had, I'm from the parent partnership meeting in Hatboro, and years ago we had a financial planner and an attorney join us to talk about some of these things, and the room was just packed because there were so many questions, and we knew that we needed to revisit it. And my God, we couldn't ask for a better person to be leading the way here. So thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much.
So we are recording this. You may have noticed when you joined on Zoom, an alert that we are recording this. We are going to be asking or providing time at the end for Q&A. So think about your questions for Patti. You can put them into the chat or the Q&A at any time during the program. Judy and I will keep an eye on those in the background while Patti's presenting, and then we'll get to as many of your questions as we can by the end. And thank you to those of you who asked questions in advance. Please rest assured that even though we're recording this, you will not be on the recording. So I take a lot of time to edit this when we're finished before it gets posted on YouTube. We're really grateful that we can post this because so many people will say, oh, I couldn't be there live, even though I really want to be, is this going to be available later? So anything personal, though, will be edited out. So you don't have to worry about your name being out there or your personal question or anything. Just wanted to assure you about that. At the end of this program, a survey will pop up, as we always have, and I'm going to ask you once again to please take the survey, even if you've taken it before. It helps us so much to have your feedback. As I was just saying, we were in person the last 2 nights, and we get such a great response to our surveys because they're handing in a piece of paper, but we don't get nearly as much response online. So we're going to ask you, please, when that survey pops up at the end, and I'll also share the link in the chat toward the end of the program, please take a moment to complete that. It really does help us. We have a couple of programs coming up next week and a couple in January, or one next week that I'm going to tell you about. We're going to be diving into specifically women and alcohol use. There's been a pretty precipitous increase in women's consumption of alcohol since the pandemic started. It's already sort of on the rise for women, and that really did increase the rate of use over the last 3 years. So we're going to be talking about alcohol use in women in particular this coming Tuesday on Zoom. We'll have a clinician with us as well as someone in recovery sharing their story.
Put the coffee in the pot.
Oh, don't forget to mute yourselves, folks, if you don't mind. Thank you very much. And we also have a program in January that I thought some of you might be interested in. I love this topic. Stigma is such a barrier to treatment, to pathways to recovery, for the family member, for our loved ones. So we're going to be talking about stigma with our partners in Bucks County. This is also going to be on Zoom. You can see the registration there, but I'm going to put some links in the chat that will take you to our calendar so you can find all these registration pages there. One more that I thought I'd mention, this is in partnership with a school district, the school district of Springfield Township in Montgomery County, but it is on Zoom, and you're welcome to join no matter where you live. We'll be talking about, vaping has really changed so much for our young people. So we'll talk about nicotine, cannabis, and all of the kind of confusion and misinformation there is around some of these products and the way they're administered and the potency and all that sort of thing. So that'll be on January 17th. We have a lot more coming up, and so I hope that you will join us by looking at our calendar. That link, as I said, I'll put in the chat in a moment. We also have a YouTube channel with a lot of programs that are recorded that can give you deep dives into some very specific topics. We have more than 130 recorded programs on our channel at this time. I also like to point out, I know that a lot of folks who attend our programs are parents like me and like Judy, who have a loved one with a substance use disorder. And so we have these support group meetings that are just phenomenal. They've saved my life these last 13 years that I've been attending. We have 21 meetings a week. Half of them roughly are in person and half are on Zoom. If you go on this page of our website, you can see all these buttons that are on the calendar to show you when they are. The purple buttons are in-person meetings. The green buttons are Zoom meetings, and you can click on any one of those and find the contact information for the leadership. If it's a Zoom meeting, there will be a Zoom link here. In this case, it's an in-person meeting, so there's the address. Other details can be found there. And then finally, I wanted to let you know that we have our family recovery course, which is all of our programs are free to attend. So is the family recovery course. This is a 3-part course for family members, particularly parents and guardians whose loved one has a substance use disorder. And this is a 3-part course led by 2 instructors who have lived experience with this. They are amazing people, and we cap this course at 12 participants. So it's nice and intimate. We meet 3 consecutive weeks. Whatever, you can look at our calendar. I think we have 9 courses scheduled currently on our calendar on this part of our website, conversation.zone/FRC. So now I am very excited to introduce you to our speaker, Patti Brennan. Let's see, let me get this stuff out of the way for a second. So Patti is, oh, sorry, hang on. I can't see.
I'm right here.
I know. I'm trying to hide my meeting control so I can get to see your bio. Here we are. Patti is a graduate of Georgetown University, and she's a certified financial planner. Patti is consistently ranked one of America's top financial advisors. In 2023, Forbes ranked Patti the #1 woman in Pennsylvania, 12th in the nation, #1 for high net worth clients in Eastern PA, and she's a Barron's Hall of Fame advisor. Patti also has the elite distinction as being chosen as Entrepreneur of the Year for Greater Philadelphia by Ernst & Young. As a wife and mother of 4 children, Patti has learned to balance the most important job in the world with the needs of a growing company. She comes from a long line of family members who have struggled with substance use, including being a mom, as we said before. So yes, I am so glad that Patti is with us. Thank you all for being here. And thank you, Patti.
Thank you so much, Kim. Thank you. What a great introduction. And thanks to all of you for taking time to be with me tonight. What I'm going to do, let me kind of give you a feel for what we're going to do tonight. First and foremost, before I even start, as Kim mentioned, I don't know exactly what you might have been going through or where you are right now. For whatever it's worth, I really do get it. I come from a long line of people with substance use disorder. Kim and Judy, by the way, I love that word. It doesn't seem to have quite the stigma as addiction or being an addict. And I have, a son who is in the program successfully, et cetera, but it was really hard. And those parent groups saved our lives. It saved his life as well. So I can't say enough about these programs and what, be part of the conversation is all about, and just the wide range of information that is available. So thank you so much for having me, and thanks to all of you for joining me tonight. I was thinking about this a lot. And what I'd like to do, and I'm going to give this a shot. We'll see, make sure it works. Okay. We did how we doing there, Kim? Does it work?
Beautiful.
Okay, fantastic. So what I did was I really gave tonight a lot of thought. I wanted to, make these comments, really tailor them to what I would want to know if I were sitting where you're sitting. So, we'll talk about some concepts and things of that nature. But I really wanted to talk about concepts, process, strategies, specific strategies that might relate to what you might be going through, might, answer some of the questions that you may have come to tonight with. And then we're going to talk about some key force multipliers. There are certain things that can really turbocharge this whole process. And last but not least, I'm going to end with 5 mistakes that people make over and over and over again. So it's a packed night. I'm going to be sensitive to your time, and I really want to make sure that we have plenty of time if you have any questions. So when we think about the financial impact of addiction, I think about it in terms of 3 kind of objectives: to restore financial independence, both for you and your loved one, empowering them, giving them a sense of hope and control over their financial affairs, avoiding things that might be a trigger. And let's face it, money can be a trigger. So it's, giving them ownership, okay, and giving them tools, budgeting, boundaries, all of the above. And then setting aside and understanding how important it is for them and you, frankly, to invest, just like you're doing tonight, in your own recoveries. That is the most important thing. We all know this is a lifelong journey. It is a lifelong disease. It's not something that gets cured. So to invest in that recovery on an ongoing basis, I think, is the most important investment that we can make. So let's talk about some of these concepts. And I want you to know, as they fly through here, true financial security doesn't happen accidentally. It all sounds wonderful, right? There are certain key force multipliers. We're going to go over them. You can get where you want faster than you thought and further than you ever dreamed possible. It's there. As a sidebar, I was talking with my son, and I'll never forget when he came to our family group, and he was speaking in front of a bunch of parents, and he was in the program and doing well, still is, thank God. And he said, people change for one of 2 reasons: inspiration or desperation. And I found that to be really profound, because so often we talk about, we've got to let them hit their bottoms. We got to do this. I agree with that. We have to let them go through their own journey. At the same point, if there's no hope, then, they kind of want to say, well, why bother, right? I'm just going to keep on doing what I'm doing. So I think there's got to be a little bit of both. We have to recognize that there are things that destroy wealth. Okay. And we will talk about some of those wealth destroyers. Forget the past. The past is history. Start right where you are. There's always hope. Trust and respect are earned, and it's never, ever too late, until, of course, it is. So when we think about these concepts in the midst of chaos, and I really want to recognize that, again, I don't know who's on tonight. I just remember what it was like when we were going through it. 3 of our dearest friends literally yanked me out of my office and said, come on, we're taking you to lunch. We're going to talk. And it was something I was avoiding. I didn't want to do it. My goodness, it was the most important thing that I could have done on that day. I'll never forget it. So as we think about the financial aspect of this, I think it's really important to let's not let our guilt, our shame, sabotage, don't let that sabotage your financial futures. It's really important to draw that line. I got to tell you, that's just so important for you, for your peace of mind, for your family, for maybe if it's a child, it may be other kids. Okay. So let's make sure you don't self-sabotage there. We all know the 3 C's. You didn't cause it, you can't control it, and you can't cure it. We hear that over and over again. And as our friend, dear Bill Roberts, will say, yeah, I get that, but you can contribute. So that's something that we all need to remember. What are the ways that we're contributing to that behavior? I think, and I don't know whether or not this has kind of gone through the circles, but have you ever heard of the 3 Gs? I always have to look them up. The 3 Gs are get off their back, get out of the way, get on with your life. Have you ever heard of that? The 3 Gs.
I never heard of those before now.
Get off their back, get out of the way, and get on with your life. Okay. So that's just, I think it's an important message. And as hard as it is, oh my goodness, financially. And again, I'm kind of getting right into things. It's hard. It's the hardest thing to do in the world. Believe me, I had to do it also. Turn off the tap. We don't want to feed that behavior. And we do that by making things easy, too easy for them. And again, some of the questions that we got had to do with younger children, children just evolving, 19 years old, etc. And every situation is going to be different. And you've got to use your best judgment in terms of what's okay, what's not okay. I'm going to share a few resources that you might want to be aware of to begin to nudge your loved one in a direction of being empowered to take care of their own financial affairs. So, you know, I love this kind of, I don't know, this picture because, you know, we think about perspectives, right? What you're looking at are 2 walls. These walls have the exact same number of bricks and the same amount of mortar. But clearly, the one on the right is going to be much stronger. They're staggered for a reason. And that's the way this all works too. It's integrated action steps that are integrated in such a way to make your financial affairs stronger, your family stronger, and to make all the difference in the life of your loved one and your entire family. So again, it's integrated action steps. So when we talk about the process, I call it the 4 keys for life. And again, I'm just going to say it. All of this might sound, oh, it's fine. This is great, but I don't have the time. I can't deal with this stuff. And I get it. But kind of like when my friends drag me out of my office, you know, it's worth it because you're worth it. So the process is, first and foremost, aspire. Let's talk about your ideal scene. Yes, run scenarios. What's realistic? What's practical? You got to assemble, pull all your stuff together. Let's get a very, really realistic understanding of where you are. It's kind of like, you know, it's kind of like the map at the mall. You know, I don't know about you guys. I mean, the Exton Mall is dead. But when I used to go to the Exton Mall, I'd go to the map to try and figure out where the store is. And invariably, that "You Are Here" sticker had fallen off. So I didn't really know where I was. That's the way this stuff works too. Without a "You Are Here" sticker, it's so difficult. How are you going to know how you're progressing? We human beings, we need to feel like we're making progress. I don't care if you have, you know, $10,000 or $10 million. People want to feel like they're making progress. And this is the way you can measure that. So aspire and assemble, analyze and strategize, run the numbers. What if we tried this? What if we did this? What if we go there, etc.? Run the numbers. Figure out what's going to work and then execute. Do those things. That's a plan. You execute on it, and then you monitor. How's it working? If it's working, great. If not, adjust. So what does that actually look like? Again, this is just a sample case. It's basically, you kind of go through and say, okay, if we continue doing everything that we're currently doing, that is not looking great. Okay, so that's the baseline. What are the options? What if we downsize? What if we work longer? What if we did that? Again, simple stuff, but here's two alternatives, right? Here's downsizing versus they had a second property. One sort of doesn't work, the other one does. So it gives you clarity. You get to see the results of decisions on paper or on a screen before you actually do anything. So that's where you kind of get that direction. And then it's monitored literally on a nightly basis, or whatever system that you want to use or your advisor might want to use. But to me, I don't know how to say this, but you're not a pie chart. You're not your portfolio. You're not your 401k. You're not your paycheck. Okay. So let's understand what your resources are, the value of those resources. And by the way, your ability to earn an income is huge. So let's understand that, run the numbers, and adjust as needed. The 6 key force multipliers are itemized here. What you just saw were customized tools to model and stress test your financial future. Specific strategies, okay? We're not just looking at some, model that was found on the internet of what you should do, etc. The big thing right now is everybody should wait on taking Social Security till they're age 70. I got to tell you, not always. Not always. What's right for you? It's different for everyone. The savings with tax efficient compounding that can blow your mind. I do have a couple of things on that. I'll go through that. Accountability checkpoints that optimize your resources and human capital. This is what we do in the rooms. It's that accountability. It's like meeting. How are you doing? What's happening? Etc. It's just having that buddy system. And that occurs again in the meeting rooms. It occurs with your advisor, just to say, how's it going? We were going to do A, B, and C. Is that working? If not, let's adjust. Sidestepping mistakes are so important. If we just do that, that can be huge in terms of keeping you on track. And then I like number 6. Number 6, I think, is really important in terms of being a force multiplier. Every once in a while, be kind to yourself. Do something for yourself, for your family. Otherwise, this isn't going to work. So if it's all sacrifices, if it's all saving, if it's all this, right? Well, it's just not going to be sustainable. So let's just recognize that we're all human beings. Give yourself a break. It's not going to be perfect. It doesn't have to be. Just start. Start where you are. Specifically, there are some programs that I want you all to keep in mind. And I'm just looking at my watch because I could talk forever, by the way, so I want to be sensitive to your time. The first is Medicaid. Now, one of the questions that we got had to do with empowering a son or daughter to take on their own financial affairs when they're really not in a position to. The question specifically related to medical insurance. Well, I got to tell you guys, the ACA, the Affordable Care Act, has really good insurance. And if your loved one isn't earning an income, the subsidies are incredible. Like really good insurance with very good subsidies where it's really inexpensive. So, for example, some of us, actually my kids are now off my payroll, but my youngest just turned 26. He's no longer on our medical insurance. So a lot of people will do that, especially with their loved one, if they're in this in crisis mode. If the desire is to get them off of your medical plan, it's okay. Forgive yourself. It's actually the beginning of adulthood, right? So the ACA, Affordable Care Act, Penny in Pennsylvania, has great insurance for really cheap. It's based on their income. By the way, Medicaid, another program that is, if they're not working, it's also really good insurance. So FYI, people say, oh, I don't want to go on Medicaid. I don't want to go on Medicaid. Hey, why not? It's better than Blue Cross Blue Shield in many cases. So keep an open mind to the programs that are out there and available. And yeah, you might need to do some nudging with your loved one. And depending on where they are in their program and their recovery, it may be a good first step for them to begin to investigate it, empower them, give them those tools. Food stamps, another thing, SNAP programs, etc. And, you know, they do have work requirements, but I thought that this was really important. If there is a physical or mental limitation, if they're participating in a drug or alcohol program already, they're in. And for a family of four, that it can be $291 a day. So these benefits are out there and available. The energy program is just there. I don't know whether or not that's really all that helpful or relevant. Again, it's just out there. This is probably for adult families, etc. So again, getting into specific strategies, very important for everybody here to know, and anybody kind of involved in this disease knows that your retirement accounts are completely protected. So please try not to raid your own retirement accounts to help your loved one, because you know one of the questions had to do with liability exposure. Okay, so you know, if the question was, you know, pretend it's a son or a daughter, it doesn't really matter. Our daughter is, you know, looking at car insurance. It's really expensive for her to get her own policy. We are thinking about putting her on ours. What should we understand? It is an important consideration. To be honest with you, it's an important consideration for any parent, because I mean, let's face it, if I have a 16-year-old or a 17-year-old and they're texting and driving and they end up killing a family, who's going to get sued? My 17-year-old? No, they're going to go after the parents. So retirement accounts are completely protected. They cannot be attached in a lawsuit. So keep those intact. That's really important. Number two, account titling. In Pennsylvania, well, let me take a step back. I have found that oftentimes when new clients come in, I look at their statements, I look at the bank accounts, everything is titled joint with rights of survivorship for a married couple. Makes sense. If I die first, Ed, you can have it. If Ed dies first, I can have it, right? So I love you, kind of, you got it, right? Well, there is also a titling called tenancy by the entirety in the state of Pennsylvania that basically is exactly the same. I love you, Ed, you can have it. I love you, Patty, you can have it. However, for liability purposes, we both have to do something wrong in order for that to be available in a lawsuit. How's that for interesting? I will tell you, every client has tenancy by the entirety that we take care of. Your bank accounts, your joint, anything, okay? It's just, it doesn't cost you anything. It's pretty much the same. It's available for married couples. It's a great way to protect those assets as well. Now, as always, and I probably should have started out this way, as I talk with all of you, please keep in mind that I'm not an attorney. I'm not a CPA. Always run these things by qualified counsel as it relates to these issues, as well as, and I'm going to get into the weeds as it relates to wills and trusts and how to set that up. Always, you know, verify, etc., with a qualified estate attorney. I will say, for whatever it's worth, that fortunately, because we're independent, right? I'm independent. I don't work for anybody else. Merrill Lynch. I'm one of those stubborn Irish ladies. You know, they can't tell me what I can do. But anyway, so the point there is that we have access to some of the best people in the country. And we get to take this idea from that firm in Chicago and that idea about that trust in Florida. By the way, Florida's got some of the best law firms. So it just is really nice. The substance abuse clause that I'll talk about later, that came from a law firm, not even in Pennsylvania. So these are things where together we can come up with strategies that will help you accomplish the things that are most important to you, and also to protect you, what you've worked so hard for. So retirement accounts, account titling, umbrella liability policies. They're cheap. They cover over your car insurance and your home. Okay, so you have liability protection on those policies, and umbrella covers anything over and above. You don't need coverage for your retirement accounts because nobody can touch those anyway. So the umbrella, the amount, I would say you want to make it at least equal to those attachable assets. Now, most attorneys will not go after your primary residence, but if you're really worried, you can include that in terms of that. And these policies are not expensive, $400 a year. It's a lot of protection for not much money. Last but not least, keep in mind to keep your stuff really protected, lock things up. We talked about the liability insurance, et cetera. This one here, frauds and scams, again, may not be as connected with substance use disorder, but you never know. And you just don't know, what our loved ones have access to in terms of our social security numbers, our account numbers, things of that nature. So you really do want to be careful about that. Always, 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 if you look at that stuff online, the easiest thing is to get two-factor authentication. That way, if somebody is trying to get in, they would have to have your cell phone with them in order for them to be able to actually get into your accounts. So that's really, really important. I'm just going to also say, because a lot of people may not understand the difference. There's a difference between fraud and scams. Fraud is something that might happen at the financial institution, yada, yada, yada. If there is a loss due to fraud, then you will be reimbursed for that. That is something that, if somebody called and pretended that they were you and they didn't verify, identity, that's on that company, and they need to make you whole if the money went out. Scams are different. Scams occur when the individual is actually doing the thing themselves because they've got a grandchild in Peru who needs money right away. And there's so much of this stuff going on. We had a meeting, over the summer, and a really wonderful couple had $1.1 million stolen from them. And they were talking with the fraud department at one of the biggest banks. They were talking with the Justice Department. They checked, they verified, they did to make sure that everything was okay. Gone. And there's nothing anybody can do. So we personally here, we don't allow wires anymore. Wires are really suspect. We only use something called ACH. That's very, very secure in the ACH system. The Bitcoin and all that kind of stuff. But I guess my point here is that just really, really protect yourselves, be wary. And as much as we don't want to think that our loved one would do anything like that, we have to recognize that they're not our son or daughter. They're doing things that they normally would never have thought of doing. So just be wary and stay alert and protect yourselves and your money. Okay, so let's talk about estate planning. So first, let me kind of walk you through some basic concepts, because I don't want to, talk over your heads. And I also want to make sure that we drill down on some really important concepts. So first and foremost, anything that goes by beneficiary, your 401ks, your IRAs, an annuity, etc., jointly held property, okay, that does not go through your will. Jointly held property goes outright to the other person, or tenancy by the entirety. Beneficiaries get the money within a week or two. No probate. No, the will doesn't control it. Okay, I could say in my will, I want my 4 children to get my 401k, but if Ed is the beneficiary, that supersedes. So verify your beneficiary designations. By the way, we're going to talk about trust. If you name a trust for your loved one, if you set up a trust in your will for your loved one in the event that you or your spouse or you both pass away, make sure you update your beneficiary designation and name that trust as a beneficiary. I can get into some of the language later on, or if you have any questions, anybody is welcome to give me a call. I mean it from the bottom of my heart. I'm here to help. So if you have questions, I'll share my email, send me an email. If you want to have a private Zoom account for a Zoom meeting with your own questions, and we'll drill down on specifics in your situation, I can get into a little bit more of the weeds. I just want to talk kind of generally here. But there's a lot of really important things to keep in mind. So beneficiary designations. Now, wills versus revocable living trusts. I get this question all the time. Do I need a trust or is a will enough? Depends on what state you live in. It depends on whether or not you have real estate in other states. Because if that's the case, then that real estate in New Jersey will go through something called ancillary probate. Between all of us here, it's a pain in the neck. So in that case, it might make sense to have a revocable, meaning completely changeable living trust. Put the deed into the name of the living trust, no probate. Okay, so that's the reason why people set up revocable trusts. Is it necessary? Again, it depends on the state in which you live. In Pennsylvania, probate is it's a non-issue, and again, I'm not an attorney, but we've done probate for so many of our clients. In Chester County, you don't even sit down, you stand at a counter. If you're the executor, you show your ID, you give them the will, and they basically ask for a list of the assets. You write a check for $200 and they say, okay, do what the will says. So it's really not this legal court process in our state that it might be in others. Okay, so wills versus revocable trusts, very important. Now, in terms of the different strategies or the different things to consider, first of all, a trust. What is a trust? Basically, a trust is like a safe. Okay, it's a vault. Now, you can set up a trust. Now, we talked about a revocable trust. There's also irrevocable trusts that people establish, and they fund it while they're still alive. That's probably overkill for most people. I will tell you that we're going to have a change in tax law, and that change might occur. It's scheduled to occur in 2025. So if people are worried about estate taxes, it's a really good idea to have a conversation with your financial advisor, your estate attorney, et cetera, to see whether or not some of the types of trusts that can avoid all those taxes would be appropriate for you. Some of the best ones you kind of want to do now before they change the law, and I'll just leave it there. So basically, what is a trust? It's this safe, okay? You basically say in your will, instead of having my son inherit this property outright, I'd like it to go into trust for his benefit. What does that really mean in English? Okay, I'm going to be very basic there. You got two account statements, right? One is in my son's name. The other one is in the name of his trust. Not a big deal, okay? It's got a separate tax ID number, and there is a trustee, okay? We'll talk a little bit about the role of the trustee. In my opinion, it is the most important role. The executor is not nearly as important. An executor is just a project manager. They're there to settle the estate. When it's settled, boom, they're out. A trustee is an ongoing responsibility. So basically, a will is a letter to your executor to say, when I die, I'd like to have this happen. The language in that will that says, I'm going to set up this trust, and here's what I'd like to have happen. HEMS is one term. you can first and foremost, you can give your trustee the option. The trustee shall or may. Very important difference, okay? If the trustee shall pay income, they don't have a choice. They don't care if they know that the kid's going to use it for heroin, tough. They have to pay it out. Versus the trustee may. Then it's up to the trustee. Now, we'll talk a little bit about, pros and cons of that in a second. So HEMS has to do with principal. The trustee may pay income, may pay principal, and you can designate the payment of principal to be for HEMS, for their health, their maintenance, their health, their education, their maintenance and support. Health, education, maintenance, and support. The terms are really broad. So depending on the situation, I would always suggest considering a substance abuse clause. It kind of gives your trustee an out. It basically gives the trustee the opportunity to mandate that if they suspect that the person is using, they can mandate that they have to get tested. And if they test negative, they're not getting anything. And that can be added to the trustee shall or the trustee may. I would say just put it in there. It's a paragraph or two. It's powerful, especially for our families. Okay. Incentive trusts, just to kind of close that loop, incentive trusts are basically language. Remember, this is a letter. You can put in it whatever you want. Attorneys will put in all their legalese. And to be perfectly honest, they kind of need to do that. They know what works. It's been tried and true and tested in the courts. However, if there is something important to you, let me give you an example unrelated to our families. We had a family who really, their values were such that they really believed that it was important that if their children and their spouse felt that they would like to have a parent stay at home, because they kind of felt that that was important for young families, that if they wanted to have a parent leave work and stay at home, that the trust would pay the equivalent of $50,000 per year growing at inflation. So that's an incentive trust. It wasn't mandated. It was just there if they wanted to do that. It was part of their value system, and they can work. So keep that in mind. We're going to talk about disincentive trusts also. So trusts are powerful tools. Again, we've talked about drug testing provisions. Staggered distributions work like this. A lot of times with young families, we don't know how the kids are going to turn out. We don't know who they're going to marry, et cetera. And remember, this money in a trust is protected against divorce as well. So that's kind of for whatever it's worth. So basically, a staggered distribution would be something like the trustee may pay income and principal for health, education, maintenance, and support, or whatever they believe, subject to their own discretion. And the child has the right to request a distribution at the age of 25. It used to be a third was the rule of thumb, a third at 25, a third at 30, a third at 35. That way they can't blow it all at once. Now we're seeing a sea change, because I don't know about you guys, we're seeing it also. Kids are maturing later. So that staggered distribution might be 10%, that they can request 10% of the principal in the trust. And then maybe 20%. So they stagger it and layer it out even further. Or they just leave it in trust for their lifetime, with the opportunity that at some point they could step in as a co-trustee so that they have some ownership. They get to understand how this is working, right? But anything that is principal related, the independent trustee would be paying out. I mentioned choosing a trustee as being one of the most important decisions that you make. And that question came up yesterday. Like, we don't have family in the area. Who do we choose? And for whatever it's worth, it's a question that comes up so often. So first and foremost, when you're thinking about doing a trust and you're thinking about who would be the person who would manage the trust, they don't need to know anything about money. So remember, they can always hire somebody to do that part, right? So I would not worry about that too much. I would focus on the word trust. I love the word trustee because it's exactly what it is. Who is that person who you would trust to do what you would do if you were still alive? And, a lot of times it's a family member. I will tell you, the family dynamics with siblings, especially when we're dealing with someone with substance use disorder, that can get glitchy, because we all know they can be very manipulative. And it could be, give me some of this money. Come on, give me this money. I'm good. I mean, you can just imagine what that's like. And it's hard on the sibling who has been named as the trustee. You can name a trust company. A lot of people shy away from trust companies for all the right reasons. I will tell you, up until about really just 2 years ago, I was nixing trust companies because they charge a lot of money, and it's like going to Mr. Mooney at the bank. I don't know, that I'm probably dating myself with I Love You, Lucy, but it's hard. I will tell you that there are some trust companies who are literally just acting as that gatekeeper, and they are doing exactly what you've outlined in your trust, and they're not that expensive. So if worse comes to worse, you can choose a corporate trustee, or if you choose a family member or a friend, okay? I like to say, choose a trustee, choose a contingent. If that person is unwilling or unable to act, who could step in? And or you can give those people the opportunity to name their own successor, which might include a corporate trustee if no one's available. So the trustee is very important. I think that's where the language in the trust can be so helpful, because it gives them the direction and they can say, sorry, no can do. Can't do it. It's interesting because another question, and I know I'm kind of being random here, but another question that was asked, I thought was really a really good question. And that is, what about an annuity in a trust? Now, first and foremost, FYI, this is not a recommendation, and I am completely agnostic, okay? Most people hate annuities. I don't love them. But this might be a case where one might be appropriate, depending on the facts and circumstances. Again, you're all different. Family dynamics are different. The kind of annuity that I'm thinking of would be one where you basically fund the trust with the annuity, and then it's something called an immediate annuity that pays out a stream of income, like a pension, for the rest of their lives. It is what it is. There's no access to principal. You just get the income. And the trustee has no decision to make. Sorry, that's it. And they figure it out. And God willing, hopefully that they do. So that may be an alternative. It may not be. Okay. It doesn't have any flexibility whatsoever. Once it's funded and you turn on that tap for that income to come out, it's an irrevocable decision. So, and there's lots of different designs of annuities. Some are not quite so stringent. And the family dynamics and each one of your situations, I mean, honestly, I would want to hear about all that before, kind of giving you some options. So that's that. Trustee is very important. Also, something that we're seeing a lot in documents is a role called the trust protector. What's a trust protector? Basically, a trust protector is not the trustee. It is a person that could be there as a resource for the trustee and the beneficiaries to maybe select a new trustee. Let's say that the trustee is named and they're in a car accident. There's no contingent. The trust protector could step in and name a new trustee, understanding the family dynamics and things of that nature. No conflicts of interest. They're not going to be the trustee, yada, yada, yada. So that's a kind of an interesting role. They can bring you up to speed in terms of tax law, et cetera, changes in law. You know, another thing, and I don't know if I have it here or not. I'm going to get one thing in trusts. I just think that, you know, they're big and thick and long with lots of, you know, provisions and things of that nature. It's because you want as much flexibility as possible. And again, all, I don't really know, and you don't know. But one thing I think is kind of important is for the trustee to have the ability to move the domicile of the trust. Because let's say that you live in Pennsylvania, the trust, when it's set up, is going to be a Pennsylvania trust. Well, Pennsylvania is not a great state to have a trust in. It's fine, but you're going to get taxed on it, right? Or the kids are going to get taxed. Maybe you move it to Nevada, no tax. Nevada is also what they call a decanter state. Pennsylvania is not. A decanter state means that in the you know, belief of the trust protector, the trustee, that it makes sense that this trust, that the provisions don't really apply anymore, that the trust can be amended without it being a big court proceeding. Okay, so decanting after the fact, after death, might be something that would be attractive, depending, again, as always, on the facts and circumstances of the case. So that's why you kind of want this fluid, you want to know what the different options are. I think, and I don't know if I mentioned this anywhere here. Nope. I'm going to add one more thing as it relates to trusts, and that's because so many people have a significant amount of retirement account assets. If you name the beneficiary of the retirement account a trust, this is where a really good estate planning attorney is important, because there's a few paragraphs that need to be added as it relates to retirement accounts due to a law that was passed December of just last year called the Secure Act 2. Now, it's kind of you know, there's Secure Act 1.0. We've known that. Now we have 2.0. So I just think it's really important that you're working with a qualified estate planning attorney. Also, that attorney puts in as much flexibility as possible. For example, and I'm going to get into the weeds a little bit, and I'm sorry if I'm putting you to sleep, but when it comes to these things, you can have an accumulation trust or a conduit trust. The retirement account, you have to take out required minimum distributions over 10 years. It's $1 million. $100,000 is coming in, right? If it's a conduit trust, it's coming in and then going right out to your beneficiary who's got substance abuse disorder. You may or may not want that. That's a conduit trust. An accumulation trust, the $100,000 has to come out, IRS law, is paid into the trust account, and it stays there. And then the trustee does with it based on their best judgment. Now, that sounds wonderful except for one thing. Trusts pay much higher income tax on that money than an individual does. What I like to see is when, and you know, I rarely see it, to be honest with you. I'm kind of a nudge when it comes to these things. So I'm basically saying to the, and this is not about me, but just say to your attorney, how about we give the trustee the opportunity to choose each year? We either accumulate or we conduit it. That way you're not locking the trustee in one way or the other, because to be honest with you, trust law and tax law changes a lot. So again, that's, I'm getting into the weeds a little bit, but that's a consideration. So other considerations, firm boundaries while you're alive and also when in the estate plan. And by the way, that those boundaries, you can write a handwritten letter to your family and attach it to the will. It's not legally binding, but it just, and I got to tell you, I really like this approach, especially if it's in blue pen in your own handwriting, because it gets away from all the legalese and says, this is why this is important to me. This is why it's important to us. So basically, again, don't sacrifice your own well-being. Find a support system. Everybody needs it. It's okay to be afraid. It's okay to even get mad. We got to separate our kids from their addiction. Disincentive planning. There's got to be some, natural and logical consequences. And we've talked about the other things. And I think that, these other ones on the right are fairly straightforward. Just one thing I would really highly discourage, I would avoid what might be simple, and that would be like disinheriting your loved one that has substance abuse disorder. I'd stay away from that. There's other things you can do. I would probably stay away from that unless there's so much money that has been put into their recovery. And unfortunately, the other kids, become victims of their issue that they already got their inheritance. That's okay. Whatever works for you. So the other ones, the don'ts, you'll see here, don't ignore the problem, don't berate don't make the habit of lending money, very important, or ignoring your own needs. You got this little asterisk here, try not to. Because again, we are all painfully human. It's easy to say, much harder to do. Okay. The math behind compounding, I'm not going to belabor this again. This is more about the hope. Basically, what this is saying here, guys, is, when kids are starting out, when people are starting out, it's a slow slog. This is just, compounded returns. The eighth wonder of the world. What I'm demonstrating here is they've got $100,000. It takes over 10 years for that money to accrue another $100,000. But if they just leave it at 7% rate of return, it takes about 6 years to accrue the next $100,000. So the longer it's in there, look at this, towards the end, it's about a year and a half. You're adding another 100,000. That's because the money that's been saved has earned a rate of return or interest that's now earning that interest. That's compounding. It's kind of like this. It feels like nothing's happening, nothing happens, and then boom. That's hope. We got to keep the hope alive. Okay. This is my pet peeve. Clumping account values on a portal. That is not portfolio management. I'm seeing that more and more. People say, well, I have a plan. I've got this. And what they have is a consolidated dashboard with accounts. That's not real. Portfolio management is certainly not financial planning. Financial planning is basically, it's a set of action steps integrated to accomplish the things most important to you. So here's a question. Is financial planning, is wealth management just a fancy term, upscale for financial planning? Actually, it really isn't. Wealth management, and wealth could be $50,000. That's, what you have is what you have. It's your everything. That's your wealth. Okay. So that's important to recognize. Wealth management is the ongoing management and execution of the plan. It's basically a sign of a plan well executed because, again, you're getting that compounding and it's outcome oriented. All right. So let's talk about the 5 out of 15 mistakes. And I could go on and on about this stuff. So basically, the first mistake is using the wrong benchmark. Now, what do I mean by that? Now, I will tell you, and I have to get my little cheat sheet here. In athletic competition, okay, what you see there on the screen is a picture of actually my own sister. Mary Ellen was in the Olympics. She's a 2-time bronze winner. And I'm going to start reading something because it's, it's kind of complicated. I'm going to kind of walk you through this concept of counterfactual thinking. This has to do with what we do to ourselves when we're comparing our families to other families, our children to other children that they went to school with. It happens when we're comparing our net worth or our financial resources to other people. It's benchmarking. Get over it. Stop. It's not helpful. Okay. Basically, it's well known in psychology that a person's achievements matter less. What you do in life doesn't really matter versus how you judge what happened. In athletic competition, and by the way, this is Mary Ellen in Barcelona, there are very clear winners and losers, right? Very clear. Somebody won a gold, a silver, and a bronze. You'd expect that the silver winner would be happier than the bronze winner. But I will tell you, if you were to talk with my ecstatic sister, she would tell you that is not the case. In fact, there's been lots of studies on Olympians and why silver winners, some of them gone in deep depressions, commit suicide, etc. And the reason is because of this thing called counterfactual thinking, or imagining an outcome that didn't occur. Okay, so the silver medal winner looks at their performance and realizes that they were so close to winning a gold, to being on that top stand. Mary Ellen, on the other hand, she's just really happy that she didn't get fourth. She's thrilled to get a medal at all. So that's basically what happens. And we see it in social media. We see it in so many different areas. It's that counterfactual thinking using the wrong benchmark. It is what it is. I'm just going to say, please try not to do that to yourself, to your families, to your loved one. Don't do it to, as it relates to your financial affairs, your advisor. By the way, the S&P 500 has no idea how your money is invested. It's the wrong benchmark. So no need to compare your investments to an arbitrary benchmark that has no relevance to your situation. So the second one is inertia and procrastination. And I say that again with love. I get it. This is probably the last thing that you want to be dealing with. But it's kind of important because, again, you don't want to become a burden on other people. You want to have financial confidence, peace of mind. I will tell all of you straightforward, we can't give you peace of mind. No advisor, no counselor can give you peace of mind. All we can do is set things up so that you feel confident, that you've got some confidence that you're moving in the right direction. The thing that will sabotage that more than anything is inertia and procrastination. Okay. You've got this bird eating a frog. Okay. Mark Twain once said, if you eat your frog in the mornings, the rest of your day is going to be phenomenal. Now I'm paraphrasing that, but basically what that means is do the hard stuff first. Okay. And that relates to all of this and working with your loved one and your financial affairs. It's not easy, but it is simple. You just have to start. The next one is no organizing principles to guide your decisions. Now, what you see here, I think is important. And again, this is where that scoreboard that you have for yourselves and being able to keep track of your progress is really important because it kind of gives you that motivation and it helps to guide those decisions. So the scoreboard is here because it reminds me of a story that was told in a book by Sean Covey called The 4 Disciplines of Execution. And they wrote about Hurricane Katrina. And in Hurricane Katrina, they had the hurricane, and there was a high school football team who loved their Friday night football. And, the two teams got together.
Thanks.
Said the fields look fine. Let's go ahead. We need this. Let's have the game. Unfortunately, the scoreboard had been blown away. So they had the game and everybody showed up and they've got the face paint and they've got the jerseys and everybody's ready. And as the game went on, people were talking to each other. People weren't really watching it. They weren't really engaged. And they weren't engaged because these people who would normally be going nuts and screaming and yelling and, keeping track of the score, etc., they didn't know how much time was left. They didn't know what down it was. They didn't know the score. So that's what I'm referring to, organizing your financial affairs, running numbers, keeping track of your progress. The other way to do that is an organizing principle that we use as it relates to your financial affairs is what I call the 3 pools of money. Okay. Pool number 1 is your cash flow money. And, it's in any market environment. We use this a lot of times for people who are approaching retirement or retired because they are worried about volatility, their money, what happens if this, what happens with that. And this system allows me to look them in the eyes and say, don't worry. We don't have to think about it for 7 years because we've got your 0 to 2 year money in pool number 1, safe and secure. That's where your cash flow is coming from. Pool number 2 is your next 3, 4 years in those types of investments. They're not guaranteed, but they're not going to be doing wicked volatility. Okay. They're going to jiggle. Pool number 3 is your inflation hedge. Those are those long-term assets. This is not something that we just cooked up. It's based on a lot of research in terms of when markets go down, how long do they stay down? How long does it take to recover? Now, this is done in addition with, the progress report, et cetera, keeping track. So basically, as we're using pool number 1, money's going up, money's going down. We're always rebalancing and in that state of replenishment. So you stay 7 years ahead of the next volatile market. That's a guiding principle that can increase the longevity of your assets. Number 4, thinking once is enough. Again, it's planning, it's management, it's a verb, it's not a noun. So it's something that needs to be monitored. And number 5 is a big one, giving up. I'm not kidding you. I've been doing this for over 30 years. You can't really see me, but I have this road in the middle of my forehead, lots of wrinkles. And I want you all to know I've earned every single one. We've literally helped so many families and knock on wood, we've helped 1,000 people do this and never run out of money. There's always hope. Yeah, there may be some adjustments. You got to understand what they are, be realistic. And some of you might know this. I don't know if you know this or not, but I used to be an ICU nurse. So it's kind of like the doctor, right? You're sick, you've been diagnosed with chemo. Well, it's unfortunately, it is what it is. The earlier we find it, the better, the easier it is to cure. And by the way, that cure might include chemotherapy. It's going to make you throw up. You're going to lose your hair, but it's the only thing I know to cure you. That's important. Let's be real about this. Let's figure it out. There's always a solution because you can make this work. You can make it work for your loved one, for your family. You can do this. So that's pretty much it. Kim, I don't know if at this point, how are we doing on time? I'll get my trusty.
We've got about 19, 20 minutes left. That's
okay.
Great. So if you would like to stop sharing, leave up your screen if you want people to grab that QR code. Is that for your website? Because I already put
that's the website, etc.
I put that link in the chat. Everybody's got the link to your website in the chat. And I can drop it
there. There's resources there also. There's podcasts on different topics, etc. We just updated it, etc. I'm going to share something with all of you that I kind of alluded to in the beginning. And, I just want you all to know that, this is the pits, right? It's hard. And I also want you to know that It can, if your loved one, if someone's going to have a disease, it's a great disease to have. Now, you might think I'm out of my mind, right? And actually, well, I won't stop there. But here's why. One of the things that you may or may not know is that I come from a family. I'm one of 7 kids. 5 of 7 of us are in the program. Okay. I figured it out when I was in my 20s. I have been sober for almost 35 years now. Okay. And one of the most incredible life-changing meetings that I went to occurred, interestingly, in Villanova. And it was one of these meetings that I didn't want to go to, but I went and I sat in the back. And the person who was leading the meeting, it was one of those themed meetings. And his theme was similar to, if you're going to have a disease, it's a pretty darn good one to have. And what I appreciated was it was research based. I'm kind of a nerd, just don't tell me something, prove it, right? And so this gentleman had statistic after statistic after statistic for people who are in a really good, solid recovery. And the gist of all those stats was that the people who are in a good, solid recovery have gone on, and this was back then, and I do believe it's true today, went on to be the top in their chosen fields, whether it be law, whether it be accounting. These people ended up being partners, whether it be in finance, whether it be in medicine. They were among the most respected people in their fields. And I tell you that because I want to share that information so that you can also share it with your loved one. Hang in there. It's the pits. It takes a while. It's not going to happen overnight. It's that old saying, keep working it till it works. It works. I'm telling you, it works. If nothing else. And I don't mean this is not about me, but maybe I could be a little bit of living proof, because you guys, I used to be an oncology nurse and an ICU nurse at Lankenau Hospital. What am I doing being picked as one of the top 100 advisors in America? How'd that happen? How did I end up being, all of these things? Ernst & Young, one of the biggest accounting firms, Entrepreneur of the Year. So my point there is, again, it's not all about the hope and that kind of stuff. You got to set those boundaries. You got to make it difficult. And it is the hardest thing that you're going to do. I had to fire my own son, so I get it. That was the best thing that ever happened to him. So again, I share these personal stories with you just to kind of, again, help you to understand that you're not the only ones out there. There are really great people who are willing to help, like Kim, like Judy. This group, oh my goodness, the resources that are available to all of us, it's incredible. And again, it's just a privilege to be one of those resources that they've trusted to bring this to you tonight. So with that, let me just kind of read some of these questions. And Kim, I don't know if you've got any others, but
yeah, no,
all right.
But I will say too, I want to encourage people to, if you have a question, either raise your hand, unmute yourself and ask, or drop it in the chat. But go ahead, Patty, if you want to address some of the ones that were asked ahead of time.
So some of these questions I think I might have addressed during my commentary. But boy, if there's one theme that came through, and I've got two full pages of questions that came through, it's when to let go, how to empower my loved one. And, again, I'm just going to say that I'm not a counselor. It's something to work with the counselors, et cetera, but it's something you got to start somewhere. Give them little wins. Give them their cell phone bill, give them their something, et cetera. Let them start and empower them. As the one question specifically related to medical insurance. And again, I would highly encourage all of you to empower your loved one, get them on a computer, go on with them if that's needed, learn about Penny, the Affordable Care Act, and find out about the subsidies. depending on their income, depending on their needs, you will be shocked at how low those insurance premiums would be.
Patty, can I add something to that? Yeah, so a lot of times what we hear from people once they are in the process of seeking recovery or in some sort of treatment, a lot of times facilities will help them to find their own medical assistance, or a sponsor can help them. So just kind of mentioning that as a way for family members who are kind of working on their boundaries and trying not to be the ones with the front row seat for these kinds of conversations. There are oftentimes other adults in our children's lives who can be mentors for them and help with that kind of thing.
I'm so glad that you said that, Kim, because if one thing that I've learned, it's that there are so many people out there who are professionals. Again, to your point, if your loved one is in a facility, those counselors, they get that question all the time. They know it just like that. So I think that's a great recommendation. Again, our sponsors, the family groups, these things come up all the time. So that's a really, really important point. I thought this one was interesting. Could you address working with the ex-spouse who does not want to contribute because he doesn't see the need, doesn't understand how few affordable options there are, and wants to see tangible results? Again, this is the family dynamic stuff. I've been in those rooms. I get it. And it's really hard. So, it's what makes it really hard is we can't change another human being. I think that the most important thing is to really come to these meetings. Kim mentioned just next week, there's going to be meetings just like this about topics like that. Some people don't want to believe that the child has the issue, or that they can't figure it out, that it isn't a willpower thing. And that's just an education thing. My heart breaks for whoever it was that asked this question, because it sounded like there was a fairly big difference in economics between the two spouses, and the spouse who had the money to be able to help wasn't really willing to do so. Again, got to make it painful for them. They got to understand that, without support, without the right therapy, without the right help, they could be signing that child's death certificate. Is that going to be okay? It's okay if they don't want to participate. Just understand that that's going to be the possible natural and logical consequence of that choice, because you can't do it. You don't have the resources. So again, inspiration, you got to make it painful for them, and understand that he's got to find his bottom too. Okay, so we talked about the estate planning. Should we be sure to assign an executor and manage the part that is being left to the child? Actually, that brings up another good question, because like in your family, in my family, all of my kids don't have substance use disorder. So should we be treating all of them the same in our estate planning documents? No. So, and as our children grow and evolve and become the responsible adults that we all hope that they will be, they can receive distributions outright, and you can set up something special for that person who may have gone through that difficult time, with the understanding that it's a lifelong disease. And you're basically saving them from themselves. It's not a punishment. You're just setting things up to preserve the assets for their recovery. That's all. And I think, for whatever it's worth, I think if it's communicated to everybody in advance while you're still alive, or maybe in that handwritten letter, that goes a long way to smoothing things over. So fair isn't always equal, and what you do doesn't have to be the same. One of the questions had to do with a spendthrift trust. That is, that's a legal term that's kind of gone out of favor in favor of some of these other things that I've talked about, in terms of giving the trustees the discretion, health, education, maintenance, and support, things of that nature. Now, again, you can put in whatever you want. If you feel strongly about how money should be used, you can put it right there in the document, or you could put it in the letter. It's really interesting how those handwritten letters kind of haunt people. And I don't mean to be weird, but it really is very effective. And those handwritten letters are also wonderful for people to read after the fact. It's just a really nice gesture. Any other questions? I think that I tried to cover most of them.
I think you did. I would love to know if anyone who's with us has any questions that they want to ask.
Oh, here was a question that I didn't answer. Is there a way to recoup any money spent on rehab of an adult child who is no longer your dependent? Can you recoup the money? Well, I'm not sure where this person was going with that. First and foremost, if it is with the facility, the answer is probably no. They provided a service, whether it worked or not, they're not going to give you your money back. So I would say that's not going to work. If you're thinking about going back to your loved one and saying, I paid for this, you owe it to me, it really probably is not enforceable unless there was a legal agreement, a loan that documented that it was a loan. Depending on the age of the loved one, that could be considered a gift, but gifts are subject to that gift tax limitation of $17,000 per year, with a caveat that you can pay for anything medically related. You can pay for their rehab, you can pay for their medical insurance, you can pay for tuition, etc. That's not subject to that $17,000 limitation. So absent a legal agreement that documented that it was actually a loan, that would have been considered a gift. There's no gift tax return, nothing had to be filed. So it might be difficult to enforce that. So that was a good question. It was kind of an unusual question. It sounds like there's, it would be interesting if there was some sort of a clawback. There is none that I am aware of. Okay, so the one question that was really, really hard for me to read and really get my arms around, and I'm going to kind of articulate it. When a child starts their substance use at a young age, a parent must fund the rehab of that child. When the child gets older, you're always waiting for the bottom to drop out and a relapse to occur. Boy, do I get it. Okay, I totally get it, and you're absolutely right. So first and foremost, and the question went on to ask, how do you hold a child financially accountable when they've never been able to make ends meet? How do you provide support without enabling when an adult child relapses and has little to no resources? I think, I wrote down some off-the-cuff responses to that. I think that first and foremost, while they're in recovery, I think it's, and this is probably old news for you, is to make it clear that relapsing has financial implications and consequences. And if they do, they're on their own. I will, again, this is not about us, but one of the hardest things that Ed and I had to do was to do exactly that. And we use the verbiage, we will support recovery. That's it. But you're on your own. We had paid for a number of different rehabs, didn't work, continued to relapse. So he needed to have more skin in the game. Now, when my group, my sponsor, my family convinced me that by keeping him on the payroll, and we all have our kids on the payroll one way or the other. I legit had him on the payroll. I had to let him go. I had to fire him. And I did. Hardest thing I've ever done in my entire life. I still feel that in my soul. And as difficult as it was, I needed to raise his bottom. That raised it, okay? What happened from there was I said, this is not an optional thing. this is your life. Go live it. We've done what we can. We can't help you anymore. It's not fair to the other kids. It's not fair to, everybody else. And he did find a rehab. Now, this is not something that you guys want to hear, but I'm just going to say it. He went on the internet and found a rehab in Thailand. And there is somebody on this call tonight, who was in that room that night when I shared this with my group. And I said, oh my goodness. And I said, there's no way, because we had heard of kids going to Europe and being found on park benches. And I'm like, no. You have to go in the United States. And he's like, look, this place is only $5,000 and I've got that in my savings. And if I have to do this myself, that's where I'm going. And oh my goodness, that was just crazy to me. So I went to my family group and I cried and I told them the story. And then my friend said, let him go. Let him go. And so we let him go. He paid for it. He paid for his flight there. He did his 30 days. He came back. Interesting story about that. As a stage 4 alcoholic, he could not go 2 or 3 hours without a solo cup full of vodka. Otherwise, he was having DTs, hallucinations, and he had already had 3 seizures. So he was stage 4, stage 5. Don't know if you guys know it. Stage 5 is when the neurotransmitters stop firing, say, wait a minute, they're freaking out because it doesn't have the depression anymore. And a seizure happens because their neurotransmitters are going crazy. Stage 5 is when they say, screw it. We're going to stop sending signals to the rest of the body. And they die. So he was stage 4. Can't go more than 2 or 3 hours without booze. So to hear him tell the story is really interesting, because he said it's really stressful to be addicted. You got to figure out, how are we going to get this? How am I going to hide it? Yada, yada, yada. He would have a solo cup next to his bed, 3 o'clock in the morning. He's waking up, he's guzzling it. He filled it back up for the 7 o'clock guzzle to go. That was his life, and it was stressful. Anyway, he figures out, gets these flights to Thailand, right? We let him go. He figured it out, whatever. I don't even know how he got there, but basically he had to fly to Canada. Then he had to fly to China. Then he had to fly to Thailand. So it was 3 flights, right? So he does that, flies to China, flies from China to Thailand, gets off the flight, full plane, starts walking, sees these people, because by the way, you can't go there. Anybody can set up a website for, $1,000 and get actors doing testimonials. It's not legit. Don't go there. Oh, if I have to do this, I'm going there, whatever. As it turns out, it was legitimate. So the people are standing there with their little poster with his name on it. He comes off the flight and he walks right by. And he keeps walking and he walks to a bar, orders 3 vodkas. Bartender lines them up for him. He's ready to drink them, takes a look at them, grabs his backpack, walks back to the people with the poster with his name on it. And he said, my name is, it's really interesting. That was his bottom. He had to pay for it. He had to realize that was it. And let me tell you, we thought he was as good as dead, but he wasn't. He did slip. He went to sober living out in California. We did the zip code therapy. He was there for a year. He came back. He's been sober ever since. So I tell you that long story. I want to cry to tell you that. It is so hard. I get it. And whether you have financial resources or not, doesn't matter. We have to cut it off and let them, again, little wins, depending on their ages, depending on their circumstances. I do think that that's important, but we got to stop feeding the beast. And we do that financially as well as every other way. So with that, it's 8:35. I got to tell all of you, thank you so much again for joining me. What a privilege this was. I hope it was helpful. There's a lot of random conversations, things that I brought up. I hope it was helpful for you. You saw the website. If you want to log on, if you have any questions, if you want to talk to me, if you want to meet, have a Zoom meeting, I'm here. It doesn't cost you anything. I'm doing this because of these people who are really providing such an important service to our community. So thank you all for joining me today. Thank you, Kim. Thank you, Judy, all of you.